Hey everybody, this is Heather with Young and Savvy Genealogist, and today I want to talk to you about keeping a journal. It's really important to be preserving the record of your own life. And one of the easiest ways to do that is through journal keeping. Keeping a journal is something I've done throughout my life. I've kept a journal since I was probably in about the 4th grade. I don't have a lot of them anymore, but I do have my journals going back to about the 7th grade. So I have created this record across time for my life, and it's really given me an opportunity to consider the story that I'm telling about myself. What is it that I'm leaving behind for other people to read and to know about me? Along the way, I've learned a lot of different things, so I wanted to share some of those tips with you today. In order to start a journal, you're going to need a couple of things. You're going to need a journal, a pen, some ink, and a little bit of imagination. And if you don't want to do a paper copy, you need your phone. When you pick a journal, it's really important that you pick something that will last. Look at the journal that you pick, and based on the materials that it's made out of, ask yourself, will this still be around in 100 years? If the paper quality isn't there, if the quality on the glue and the spine isn't there, if it's made out of like a cover or something that you don't think is going to be very durable, it might not be the best choice. Kind of have in mind, how long do I want this to last? What is my ultimate goal for this journal that I'm keeping? Is it just for me? Is it something I want other people to read? If other people are going to read it, how long do I want them to be able to read it? The choices that you make in the journal that you choose should reflect those goals that you have. If you want something that'll last, you want something that'll be archive safe, you want something that'll be acid free. And that not only applies to the paper and the journal itself that you're using, it also applies to the pen and the ink. The ink that you use needs to be archival quality. I can't tell you how many times I've looked back over journal entries that I've kept, and my big thing is I love purple ink. I love purple pens, purple ink. Purple is my favorite color. I love purple. The thing about purple ink, though, that's really tricky, especially in some of the cheap Bic pens that I've used over the years, is that purple ink, the base for purple ink is red. The pigments that they use to turn it purple separate from the ink, and you get like this red shadow behind what you've written, and the rest of it kind of almost starts to peel off of the page, and it like oozes in this really weird way that looks like it got wet. As much as we might like certain styles and certain types of inks and pens, it's really important that we use something that will last. I've started using cartridge pens, fountain pens, different types of pens where I can control the ink that I put inside of the pen. And we use, I think it's called Noodler's ink. I'll leave a link down in the description where you can find it, so you can see the type of ink that I use, and the stuff will outlast the apocalypse. Once it bonds to the paper, the only way basically for the ink to leave the paper is for you to burn it. And even if the paper gets burnt, the ink will outlast some of the cellulose that it's sitting on. It's that type of ink. It's completely permanent. So I have really enjoyed using that ink. I've used it in lots of different colors. It comes in every imaginable color that you can possibly think of. I've used red. And again, as much as I love purple, purple is the hardest color to get in archival quality. But just about any other color that you can use can easily be made into archival quality. So definitely be sure to check those out. That gives you an idea of how to start a journal. Kind of the question that everybody has after that is, well, what do I write about? That's kind of the biggest obstacle to starting a journal for some people. In terms of what to write about, you can't really go wrong. As much as I look back and I cringe over some of the things that I wrote in the 7th grade when I was 14 years old, my voice was very authentically a 14-year-old. Going on in the future, other 14-year-olds who decide to read it will be able to look at what I wrote and kind of decide, oh my gosh, she's just like me. And what more powerful way can you connect to your descendants than just being authentic to who you were at the stage of life that you were in? So there's no need to be ashamed or embarrassed about the things that you're going to write. Look at the Diary of Anne Frank. She wrote about things that were completely authentic to who she was as a teenager in that era, but her voice has taken on a completely different kind of authority just because of the backdrop for who she was and what she was doing and what was happening to her. The same thing will happen to us in 100 years' time. People will view our voices differently just because it's kind of that voice from the dust type of feeling. Connect yourself to the backdrop of what's going on around you. Sometimes when it comes to history, we can feel a little bit like fish in the water. We can look back in hindsight and realize, wow, those events were actually really significant and I didn't even realize that I was a part of them. Sometimes it can be really helpful just look through the news headlines and think about what are some of the things that people are still going to be talking about 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now. And what is my connection to those events? A really big one that our grandparents would remember was the Lunar Landing. A big one for my generation is where we were on 9/11. You know, I teach in Sunday school, and I teach kids that weren't even alive when 9/11 was happening. So it's really important for me to be leaving that record behind of where I was and what I felt and being able to identify those significant events so that I can connect myself to them. It'll help me to kind of be a voice for my generation as time continues to pass. Identifying those events isn't always easy, but there are times like with 9/11 where you know I'm never going to be able to forget where I was on this day. You know, there might be something of national interest, but never neglect the things that are kind of closer to home for you too. Keep in mind different things that are going on in your region, things that people in your region will remember that other people may not even know about. You know, my family traveled a lot down to Baltimore, talking about different things that are going on in the city and my family's relationship to it. I didn't live in that area, but it was a place that I spent enough time in as a kid that it's something that makes up the background of my life. And every single person has something different that's important to them. Some people care more about technological development, scientific discoveries, medicine and advances in medicine and different things that are happening. Let that be a part of your story. A really good example, and I'll leave the video here in the description where you can see it. One of the major events that touched on one of the families that I'm related to, there was a diphtheria epidemic that went through the Pittsylvania County community where they lived. Vaccines weren't something that were readily available in the late 1800s in Southern Virginia where my family was from. Some of those vaccines hadn't even been invented yet, and they had 10 children, and in less than 2 weeks, 5 of them died because they didn't have access to the diphtheria vaccine. What that story has done for me has given me a new appreciation for vaccines. I think it's really important for everyone to vaccinate their kids because, you know, we've reached a point where those types of deaths aren't necessary anymore. So I'm not only passionate about, you know, events like in Disneyland where people who weren't caught up on their vaccinations were dying because they weren't getting the access to vaccines that they needed. The anti-vaxxer movement, that's something I feel really strongly against, providing those vaccines throughout the world. That's something that's important to me because I don't think anyone should have to risk losing their children because they don't have access to that quality care, and how that's something that ultimately ends up being a benefit to everyone else because we all occupy the same planet and diseases don't care about, you know, geopolitical borders. That's something I care about. And just in writing a single entry about that in my journal, you know, that places me in a moment in time, connects me to history, allows me to present other stories in my family, develop this habit of creating a story with a beginning, middle, and end, creating a backdrop that you set yourself against so people can understand who you were, where you lived, what was important to you, and how that plays into a larger dialogue about your place in your family. One important thing is when you mention a place, make sure that you're describing it thoroughly. Where is that place? You know, don't just mention a city. What state or what province is that city in? If you're going to mention a person, how do you know them? Are they related to you? Are they a cousin? Are they a friend? Are they a neighbor? Did you meet them at church? How did you meet this person? This will not only create a backdrop for you, placing you where you are in time, but allowing other people who come behind you to also discover the relationships to other people that they might be related to. You know, I meet tons of people at church all the time, and if I mention them by first name, no one's going to have any idea what connection they have to me. And if they share a name with someone in my family, you know, someone might be thinking I'm talking about my sister or my cousin when I'm just talking about some person that I met at church. It's really important to be providing these types of details. It may feel a little bit awkward to write about someone, but because you're doing that, you're allowing people to not have to make assumptions or guesses about the things that you're writing about. Another really important habit that I think genealogists can start to develop is kind of replacing the family Bible culture that a lot of us have really been missing out on the past couple of generations. Anyone who's done genealogy for any period of time knows that family Bibles, up until a couple of decades ago, were the source of family information for any family that you wanted to see. Those family Bibles predated a lot of vital records that were kept on various national or state levels, and nothing has really stepped in up until this point to replace that in terms of something tangible, a hard copy that everyone kind of understands culturally that they can look at. And a lot of that has come from, you know, some people just don't go to church anymore. They don't have Bibles in their house. It's not the common family fixture in every household anymore. I think it would be really valuable for us to start replacing that record with pedigrees that we keep in our journals. Imagine the difference that that'll make in 50 years when family Bibles probably all but disappear, but they've been replaced with this other alternative that just about anybody can keep. In keeping a journal, there are lots of different options. You don't have to keep a paper and pen journal. There are lots of different apps and applications on your phone, on your computer, that you can use to do the same thing. You can use a basic word processing program and just type out a journal. You can use different apps on your phone. I remember one, it was in the Roots Tech Innovator Showdown. It was JRNL, journal with no vowels. People don't keep journals anymore, and they should, but we can adapt that to various different types of technology, and that's just one example of the dozens of different apps that are available. I don't use those. I don't really have a whole lot of opinions on them, but there are enough native things that are in your phone that allow you to write stuff down. Go to your Android store, your Apple store, whatever app store it is that you use, just type in the word journal and just see what comes up and try different things and decide kind of what you like better, what features you want. So when you use these digital options, there are a couple things you also want to keep in mind. You want to check the privacy policy and the terms and conditions of the apps that you're choosing to use. Do they protect your privacy? What types of legal claims do they make in terms of ownership over your intellectual property? Those are important things to be considering before you entrust kind of your innermost thoughts to strangers on the internet, which when you use an app, that's basically what you're doing. Do you trust this company to protect your rights as the creator of your intellectual content? Another important thing to think about with these apps on your phone is, do you have a backup plan? Are you backing up your journal? Are you backing up the entries that you're making on your phone? If anything were to happen to that phone, if you dropped it, if you lost it, if it got stolen, how are you going to access that data off of your phone? With every app that you use, it's important to ask those questions, to formulate a plan of how you're going to back up that data and to stick to that plan so that you have the same comfort and peace of mind as someone who keeps a paper and pen copy of a journal. So that's all I have for you today. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. When you subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a video. And thank you so much for stopping by, and we hope to see you again. Bye!